Hayden. I'm the Project Development Manager at Company Deal Formations. We're Ireland's leading company formation and secretarial specialists. That's our lovely unique offices in Dublin 7. We're inside a converted church, converted in 1990. So if you do come and visit us, it's a lovely little spot to have a look at. We're open over 22 years, a multi-award winning company, and we've developed from a basic formation and secretarial agent into a one-stop shop for entrepreneurs. So the idea is to basically take you from before you've incorporated your company right the way through to after that, and then to help you along the way then as your company grows and goes on. We've just been recently a service category finalist with the SFA Business Awards there back in March. So I suppose we'll crack right into it. An introduction to basically it's get planning and a guide to your formation and actually putting your company together. So over the years, I've seen some great ideas fail at the first hurdle and some mad ideas that we obviously couldn't tell them they were mad ideas, but I've seen them do brilliantly well. And the key thing that we've seen in successful businesses is that there's planning, research and patience. We'd always recommend the first step is to go home, sit down, blank piece of paper and put up a checklist for yourself, for your business. Each company is going to be completely different. But sit down with a checklist and see how long everything takes to get in place. Like this is just, it's an example. I can obviously send it on to anybody. It's a rough guide of what we kind of structure that every company is going to need. As I said, everything is going to vary as you go along. So on your left here, you've got a pre-incorporation checklist. So what you look at before you form your company and your post-incorporation then afterwards. So as you can see then, it's the company structure, how long it's going to take. On this side then, you obviously have then, you're going to have then things like your bank account, your tax registration, your web design then for the company as well. So I'm going to talk about today your most common type of company is your limited liability. So there are obviously various other options then as well, but your most common is your limited liability. And the Companies Act 2014 has made that a little bit simpler. It can now be a one-man band. So just one person who's the director and the shareholder then of the business. You would have to have a separate secretary, but that could be either another person involved in your business or a company in place as the secretary then as well. And then one of the obvious advantages is the limited liability then in terms of the investment in the business. So your personal assets aren't being put up like you would say if you're a sole trader. So if you run up credit as a limited liability company, you are protected. It's only what you've invested in the business itself. One of the key elements that you look at first before you actually go ahead with the formation is the name itself. So the strict regulation, weirdly enough, on what names you can actually choose. It has to be relatively unique. It must not clash with other names that are already on the register, and that would include things that sound similar. Things like McDonald's and McDonald's. Things like that, you won't get away with McDonald's restaurants. You'll definitely get a letter in the door from them given out to you. We would always recommend you use personal words, names, very specific locations. So Dublin wouldn't do, but small villages, estates, things like that will distinguish you from other companies that are already on the register. And then obviously industry specific terms. So ABC fruit and veg is better than ABC on its own. And always check then as well before you launch into it, are matching domain names available? A lot of people jump in, either they register domain names before they come to us and then the name isn't available as a company, or the other way around. So do have a look at that, Google it, look at the domain registry, they're floating out outside, you can go chat to them about where to find out if your domains are available. And then look at, as I was saying, you're talking about planning not just your company and where you want to be from a business point of view, that you have your process and time frame in mind. So you're looking at getting documents drafted for signature. So if you came to us, you complete an order form, we draft up documents to be submitted to the company's registration office. You'd sign off on all those, all the officers, as in the directors, the shareholders, and the secretary, and then we'll submit them to the company's registration office for approval. 2 to 3 working days, you'll have your company established. And then you'll obviously get your certificate of incorporation, your company seal, your company pack then as well, and will be provided with all of that. So as you can see on the right there, so that's the tick box of what you need then for your day one. of the company itself. So your company seal then is required by company law. Your minimum of one director and a shareholder. As I said, your company secretary then, a company or someone else involved in your business. They do, the key part of the company secretary is they do have to have enough knowledge to disclose, to actually act as the company secretary. So they don't have to have a particular qualification, but they do have to have an understanding of their responsibilities as secretary, and that is to essentially, it's to advise the directors of the business and make sure the company remains compliant. You would have your share certificates for your shareholders. You have a minutes of your first meeting, which is your day one. Everybody agrees we should have a company, and it's going to start from today. And then obviously you have all your corporation documents on file then as well. Your constitution then, which would be called, basically it's your company rule book, and it sets out what the company can and can't do within company law. So the current company law is the Companies Act 2014. So that will change as it goes along. There's constantly new bits added to it. But your ideal is as a constitution that's drafted with your company in mind. So you're looking at the advice of a secretary or a third party. They will be able to streamline that for you. And it basically allows common actions that otherwise are prevented by the Companies Act as standard. So you're talking about things like allotment of new shares for investment, or the power to send notices electronically, so by email rather than using carrier pigeon to let people know there's going to be a meeting or there's something happening within the company itself. And then straight after your company's incorporated then, this is when your kind of time frames come in. So what you don't want to do is to commit to selling something at the end of the month and you don't have everything in place, your VAT, your bank accounts. So you're looking at your corporation tax. You have the obligation to register for that within the first 28 days of trading. Your VAT then is once the company has or will meet the VAT thresholds. So that is your 75,000 in goods or 37,500 in services. Once your company is going to reach that in a calendar year, or even if you think it's going to reach that, and we'd always recommend starting the process of registering for VAT straight away. Typically it does take about 6 to 8 weeks, which does catch an awful lot of people out because they want to list that on the invoice. Your bank accounts then, most main high street banks, AIB, Bank of Ireland, I think Permanent TSB are inside as well, I think they're the same. You're looking at about a working week after you sit down and you meet your branch manager and go through the ins and outs of your company then. And then your domains, web design. So once you actually register your limited company, again the domain registry outside will give you a bit more information as well, but once you actually register your company then you can purchase a domain or build a website which will then be included as an asset as part of your business. So that would be a key part if you ever plan to sell your business. Obviously businesses say like Google and Facebook, they all own the websites that they have. So if you start a website before you've actually incorporated then it's not necessarily owned by the business, which can cause you a bit of trouble later on in terms of taxation and moving that into the business. Obviously then you look at different factors then, like does your company need a patent, does it have a product that you need to make sure nobody else can rob, or a trademark, so a logo, a slogan, any kind of name that you have for your business that you don't want anybody else to take. Things like shareholders agreements then, if you're working 50-50 even with family, friends, you don't want that to be soured by a business relationship going south or some kind of problem, some kind of disagreement. So the shareholders agreement is you would sit down and everybody agrees that that's how the company is going to operate. That's how the shares, the voting rights, and what happens if there's a deadlock, if an agreement can't be made. And then obviously does your company require some form of licensing or regulation, which catches an awful lot of people out. So things like recruitment agencies, pubs require a 7-day license. Stuff like that all takes time. So again, if you're committing to starting a business relationship with somebody, that can fail before you have everything in place because you can't deliver on what you promised them. So all those time frames become a huge factor then for yourself. And then once the company is established and you've ticked all those boxes, you've got yourself everything that you need to actually start trading and get moving, then you're looking at the ongoing compliance and maintenance of your company. As you can see, I hunted for very unique images from the internet. What I would always describe that your ongoing maintenance is think about your ongoing maintenance yourself. You know, going to a spa, getting a massage, that's essentially what you're doing with your company when you're reviewing what, you know, you're reviewing the data protection and data security of your company. You're reviewing what it needs to file each year, you're making sure that everything is in line. You know, it applies to obviously the internal and the external. So in terms of your company secretary, what they're designed to do, they're designed to advise in the ongoing compliance then of the business itself. Any changes that the directors make to the company should be delegated to the company secretary once they're agreed upon. And you're looking at changes in officers, complete change in the structure of the company, bringing in new investors, anything like that. And then the company secretary, as I mentioned earlier on, should have enough knowledge and understanding to effectively execute their roles. There's no golden qualification for that, but we'd always recommend that it's somebody who knows exactly what they're doing, or a specialist secretarial company that could come in as a third party. So again, they can provide guidance, support, and make sure that your company remains compliant. You don't miss any essential filings then as well. Obviously your annual filings then each year, you're looking at every company, regardless of the company type, has a standard amount of information that they have to bring in, split between the company's registration office and the revenue service. So you're looking at your accounts each year, tax filings, your annual return, which is just your update to the company's registration office as to the status of your business, and then your VAT then as well, if you're registered for that, typically on a bi-monthly basis, you're accounting for that. So that's either accounting for what you've allowed off invoices or you're claiming back then. So that's going to be essential for your cash flow then as well. And then failure to file in each section could incur penalties, loss of audit exemption, and risk of closure then of the company. So this is really, it's the essential parts of keeping your company ticking over, is being aware of when they're coming up, and keeping yourself up to date on what you need to actually file. On top of that then you have kind of the more internal, so your statutory registers and the register of beneficial ownership, which is coming in now within the next month for all companies. So every company has a legal requirement to maintain the statutory registers and now the register of beneficial ownership. The registers themselves, they're the history book of your business. Your directors, shareholders, any investments that are made, any changes within the company, you track them on the registers. And obviously it gives the share breakdown as well in the business. So if you're going to sell it, if you're looking for funding from any bank or institution, they will expect your registers to be kept up to date. And that is internal within the company. You don't submit those registers anywhere. It's presumed you have them up to date and everything's ready to go. And then obviously the new beneficial ownership register, it's been in for the last about 18 months for companies to hold internally, and then this month then they'll start submitting that online. So it's filed centrally and maintained, and there are fines imposed if you fail to maintain. And the idea behind that is, with data security, the beneficial ownership is who eventually owns the shares. For a one-man band, for somebody starting up their own very small business, you're going to be the beneficial owner. But it's looking at companies that are based outside of Ireland or throughout Europe, or you're looking at America, Australia, anywhere really, that they would submit the information of who that person is who owns the shares. So you have a company that might be owned by 3 or 4 different companies. You still have to list the person that benefits from it eventually. Obviously, data protection requirements and employment requirements. I'm sure you've heard loads about data protection over the last year or so. It's become so prevalent through the media, Facebook scandals, all that kind of stuff. I won't go too much into it, bore you too much. But you're looking at GDPR, which is your General Data Protection Regulation, and it's paramount for every company to collect the correct amount of information for each business transaction, and collect the correct amount of information on their customers before they enter into it, and then maintain it. So know what you must bring in, and know what you must then hang on to on a long-term basis. And then obviously there's a strict set of rules surrounding employment law and requirements then as well. So knowledge and preparation, obviously find out before you actually hire somebody, like your requirement to actually present them with a legally binding contract once they start employment with you. Things like that you can trip up on at the very start. So make sure you're aware of the requirements then before you get moving on that. So just to summarise then, I'll go through these. They will be our kind of top 5 tips, and they're just a general idea of what we'd always recommend. So obviously, as I mentioned, take time to plan and have a strategy in place. And that goes from not just your, okay, next month I'm going to get my company incorporated and start trading. You're looking at where do you want to be at the end of your first year, your second year, and your 5-year plan, and look long term in terms of your investment, when you want to take on employees, and prepare for that, and make sure you have all the information in place then as well. And we'd always get you to ensure that the company's getting the right kind of guidance and advice. You know, engage third parties, engage companies like ourselves for secretarial support, somebody, you know, HR consultants, talk to your bank manager, they'll give you loads of advice as well. Use every resource. I know Enterprise Ireland are outside, and there's several, the SFA are out there as well. There's loads of information available to you at all times. And then again, your statutory registers and your register of beneficial ownership. Have a mark there. It's a very common pitfall. We would find that an awful lot of the time you get clients who set up with us, and we've provided them with their registers as they set up, but then they haven't maintained them. So they come back to us 2 or 3 years later. They're looking to apply for a bank loan, and they're looking to bring in investment or purchase a property, and the bank demand an up-to-date set of registers. And they're very easy. You'll maintain them on a Word document. You can actually type in who's taken the shares now or who's come on as a director. But if you don't have them maintained, it can be fairly arduous and a good bit of information put in together. And then obviously ensure you file your annual return and your accounts on time. It's a big one in terms of you'll incur a huge amount of penalties if you do file your accounts and your annual return late. You get penalty fees, your loss of audit exemption, which means you're multiplying the amount you spend on your accounts. Then you have to get somebody to audit the accounts for the next 2 years after that. So it is costly and can really damage the business. So we'd always say find a good accountant. We would deal with a huge range of accountants throughout Ireland and beyond Ireland if you're based outside of Ireland as well. But we would always recommend that, and you know, feel free to drop us a line and say, right, this is where I live. Can you recommend anybody who's down the road from us? Of course we can. And we're well used to dealing with them. And then I suppose our last one is just don't be afraid to actually ask for business. Don't just expect everything to land in, set up a website and hope for the best. Do hunt it, come to events like this, you know, things like the Small Firms Association, Enterprise Ireland, organisations like that. Go and hunt the business and don't be afraid to actually ask for it and go for it. So just there's a gratuitous shot of our website there, and there's loads of information there. We've blog articles every other week, and it's all designed towards kind of helping you along and giving you advice that is relevant and will kind of steer you in the right direction. So feel free to drop us a line. Obviously, if anybody has any questions, well, feel free to get in touch. That's my own details. We're just out here as you go out the door. We're over on the right there. Or I'll be floating about for a few minutes. Feel free to ask any questions you want and let us know if there's anything we can do for you. Thanks very much for listening.